Is there a scenario where Russia may strike outside of Ukraine, especially if these strikes continue on and hitting deep into their country by striking factories where drones are made, where missile components are made that are used inside of Ukraine against Russia? There's been some claims, and I think you probably have seen some. Karaganov has even said on Glenn Deason's show and some others that, hey, we may be needing to strike some of these targets inside of Europe as a reestablished deterrence. Do you see that as a possibility?
I do. I don't think we're there yet. I think there are a couple of escalation steps that Russia could take within Ukraine before it gets to that. By the way, that also includes the use of tactical nuclear weapons inside of Ukraine. I think we're not at the stage where Putin's going to roll that dice, because that is a big escalation step up the ladder. And yes, the Storm Shadow, were paid for by the Brits. I mean, all of Ukraine's military kit, all of its ammunition, it's all paid for by us already. So we've been knees deep in this war from the very beginning. Yes, we've given them more and more sophisticated kit. They're using it deeper inside of Russia. They're using our intelligence to target and that sort of stuff. Our knees are getting further deep into the mud. But we don't actually have our avowed troops on the ground in Ukraine at this time. Of course, we do in some specialist roles, of course, but we don't have troop formations as such. So I think that is becoming a greater possibility. I don't see that as a short-term possibility. I do see a big escalation within Ukraine itself as a very real short-term possibility. Possibly, I mean, I was talking to Stanislav Kripivnik earlier today, and he was talking about basically landing a nuclear weapon on Lviv in the far west, right on Poland's border, and getting people to think about that, for example. And he was serious, about that. So I mean, he's on the. He's a friend of mine. I mean, I've got nothing against him. Former U.S. Army officer, actually, as it happens. But he's very much on the hardline faction, you'd say. But this is what people are talking about: just nuke Lviv, right next to Poland, and say, well, okay. What are we going to do next? And people are talking about this openly now. Karaganov was talking about using nuclear weapons. This is not Medvedev, who says random stuff, just to act as a bit of a lightning rod. More and more people are talking about this now, and people should sit up and ask themselves whether we really want to be getting it to that stage. Because before we even hit NATO, Russia could do a hell of a lot more damage within Ukraine than it's done so far. A hell of a lot more. I mean, you all know their military capabilities better than me. It's been very attritional. They've not put too many troops into the fire. They've been sort of taking it slowly, bleeding the Europeans white. We're getting closer to a Hail Mary right now. But I think that would be within Ukraine itself.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on that in just a second here. But given those more hawkish views inside of Russia, you can see that they've been given a little bit of oxygen up in the Kremlin. That's a pretty strong statement there. He said, if we're directly at war with Ukraine, with NATO and the United States and Europe, we may have to change the nature of the conflict, which you see feeds right into what Mr. Kripivnik said there, or Mr. Karaganov said, et cetera. And one has to wonder, are they dragging Putin more in their camp? What do you think?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not they're dragging him in this camp. He always has two camps, the hardliners and the moderates. I mean, people don't realize that there are moderates in Russia, but there really are moderates in Russia. I know a lot of them very well. But he's finding it harder to ignore the hardliners. I think that's the truth of it. And what he's saying there is very much for them, as it was for NATO countries, to show them that he's thinking about doing this. But I still think we're some way off that. What I do think is possible, and I've been talking about this quite a lot lately, is that Russia sinks a NATO ship in international waters. I think that that is much more likely. You saw the Royal Marines seize a tanker in international waters in the English Channel.
Yep.
I think, and then shortly afterwards, Admiral Grigorievich, fired a warning shot at a British yacht that's sailing nearby. I think that's where the flashpoint is going to come, actually, because Russia would feel it's able legally to defend that action as being in international waters, following a threat against its kind of economic interests on the high seas. But yeah, I mean, we're getting closer to a direct strike on NATO. I don't think Russia is going to strike first. I think, frankly, the first nuclear bomb lands on a Ukrainian city, everybody will want to talk. I I think you know that as well as I do, Danny. I think, one nuke happens, then suddenly everything changes anyway. It doesn't matter that's in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
suddenly
correct.
I think the Europeans and the Poles, who don't have nuclear weapons yet, would suddenly find themselves, like Radek Sikorski, much more keen to negotiate at that point in time, I believe. And Russia knows that. I mean, there's a reason why Russia produces so many world chess champions. I mean, they're not going to do the big Hail Mary on NATO before NATO explicitly does it on them. I just don't think we've reached that tipping point on the Russian side yet. Russia wants to avoid that. They've always wanted to avoid a direct conflict with NATO, and I believe that they still do. But, time is running out.
Yeah, that is the problem, and really to reinforce your theory there. You recall, I guess it was about 3 weeks or so ago, a lot of noise, including Medvedev, but also Lavrov and several other Russian officials said, "Hey, you better get out of Kiev because of what they have done to us. We're going to strike them and hit them hard. We're going to hit decision-making centers. We're going to hit other command and control centers, et cetera. It's been much bigger than has happened before." And nearly nothing happened. There was some strikes. There was some drone fire, some missiles, nothing out of the ordinary from what happened before. And so people think, well, it was just a bunch of hot air. Well, today, Sergei Lavrov says 2 months ago, we officially warned all foreign colleagues, both embassies and representative offices of companies, that we recommended that in order to avoid misunderstandings, evacuate from Kiev. This recommendation remains in force. That's just today. Why do you suppose that he's reissuing that today?
Well, Ukraine has just hit Moscow, and so Russia is going to hit Kiev even harder. I mean, that's just in the logic of their military statecraft. That's just what they're going to do. And so they're issuing a warning that, weapons are going to be, munitions are going to be landing heavy on Kiev. So, if you want to stay safe, then stay away, really. And that's why they're doing that. Every time Ukraine hits Moscow, St. Petersburg, Russia will always strike back. And if they can, and they normally can, they'll strike back even harder. And that is just how they operate. And we know that. They know that we know that. And so he's just reinforcing that warning. That suggests that, there'll be missiles incoming possibly as we speak.
And so what do you think might be the sequence of events? Because you said you don't believe, from how you understand the Russians, and you've lived and worked with them for a long time as a diplomat. What might be the sequence of events to even get to a nuke inside of Ukraine? Now, I would imagine that something's coming for Kiev here pretty soon, maybe more arrests or so. But how many more steps would have to go before you think that it's plausible or even concerning that there might be a strike inside of Ukraine?
Well, I think we're only 2 or 3 steps away from that point. I mean, so far,
Wow.
Ukraine is only hitting logistics. So they're hitting all refinery at Gazprom Neft, all refinery in Moscow. That created a big black cloud of smoke, right there. But, Zelensky right now, he could do anything. If Zelensky makes a move on Belarus, for example, suddenly launches a front against Belarus, seizes a significant amount of land in Belarus, that's one scenario. If there's an even harder strike deep inside of Moscow or something like that, in the city center or in the center of St. Petersburg, that's hitting non-military facilities, then that's another, there's this bus, shortly after the Belarus threat to Lukashenko, there was this kind of bus, actually in Russia, but it's full of Belarusian young sports kids, got hit by a Ukrainian drone. All of these things that the Ukrainians are doing, I mean, that they seem to have no restraint on their action. And a more serious attack by the Ukrainian side could finally make Putin snap and say, well, okay. You will recall, Danny, in the run-up to the war, there was this kind of phony war where there were back and forth negotiations. It was obvious that Biden wasn't going to make any concessions to Russia in terms of its concerns on NATO enlargement.
Yeah.
Ukraine officially killed the Minsk II agreement by saying that the Donbass would never have any devolution. That's Dmytro Kuleba. He made a comment to Polish media at the back end of January. There's this period where we were pretending to negotiate with Russia, and Russia knew all along that we weren't really serious about reaching any compromise with their concerns. and then just one day, and actually we saw the sign the day before when there's the attack happened the day after Defenders of the Fatherland Day in Russia. And I remember at the time watching all these kind of military ceremonial layings of flowers of soldiers in full uniform laying flowers at war memorials in Russia. And I thought to myself, they're going in tomorrow, and they did. So, something's going to happen. You're going to see some big military parade or some commemoration happening in Russia. And then the day after, the bomb is going to strike, and that it'll be as sudden as that. But watch out for the kind of the telltale signs the day or so before that happens. So yeah,
it's just hard for me to imagine whatever timing. It's hard for me to imagine that not happening because of something you identified earlier here. Is that number one? President Trump just gave up. He was going to end the war in a day and all this junk. Then he quit trying. So we're just kind of out and said, sure, we'll sell you some more bombs and missiles, whatever. So he's not even trying. Europe doesn't have a plan either, other than let's just keep giving money to Zelensky and I don't know, see what happens.
Well, Europe's plan. Sorry, Danny. Europe's plan was to thwart Trump at every turn. That was Europe's plan. Europe were determined.
Well, they succeeded then.
Well, they succeeded. So, I mean, that was their plan. All this coalition of the willing, all these distraction techniques, their plan was to thwart. And Keir Starmer was the worst at this, was to prevent Trump advancing some diplomatic settlement in Ukraine. And as you say, they succeeded. Zelensky is now stronger than he's ever been. He's a puppet that we've created, and he's dragging us all towards Armageddon. And that's truth of it. And the sooner he's out of the picture.
Is he a puppet or is he a Frankenstein? I mean, I'm not sure which it is.
Well, I think he was a puppet, but I think now he's a puppet master. I fear, but yeah,
that's kind of how it's looking, and that's not good for anyone: Ukrainians, Europeans, or Russians, or mankind for that matter. We'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. But man, really appreciate you coming on today. This has been a very enlightening episode, I can tell you. Thank you.
Always my pleasure, Danny. Nice to see you again. Best regard and love to Francis as well.
I will pass that along. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. By the way, we have a really big show tomorrow. I'm going to hold off on telling you about it in detail, but watch our pages tomorrow, because we have a very special guest, somebody we've never had on the show before, someone you've probably heard about, coming very soon. Watch our page there for that tomorrow, and we'll see you then on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. We don't have sponsors because we hate to hit you over the head with ads. I don't like them. So show a little love back. Subscribe, like, and send this to somebody you care about.